So we've heard the first two presentations, really, the first one by Dr. Corzo was going through the prevalence and surveillance and boots on the ground evaluation of transportation. And then Dr. Blair covered basically looking at the modeling of risks and costs. And so to bring this home, we've got Mr. David Hanneman from Christensen Farms, who is the Director of Logistics, and he's going to cover a production system approach to optimizing transport biosecurity, economics, and health. And so no pressure here, but since you're anchoring this, we're looking to your views and presentation of how do you bring all this information together to help benefit the health of your herds?
Lisa, thanks for having me come. I was listening to both of these presentations and I was going, that's why we do what we do. And it was like a double click. I knew some of why we do what we do, but that was a whole lot deeper than I had ever gone, and that really helped me understand some of the things that we do, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So my name is David Hanneman. I'm the Director of Logistics at Christensen Farms. I've been with CF for about 4.5 years, roughly, and my history had nothing to do with pigs. I grew up in a dairy community in southern Wisconsin, and my whole career has been spent in consumer products. So everything I shipped in the past was in a cardboard box, on a pallet, in a dry van or a reefer running down the road. So the transition to this world has been fascinating to me. And this cargo takes a whole lot more care than a cargo or a cardboard box on a pallet. At Christensen Farms, we focus on our people, we focus on our pigs, we focus on our planet, and we focus on sustaining our prosperity for the future. And what I'm going to talk about is some of the things that we do around biosecurity in transportation at CF. For those of you that don't know, CF is a very large producer. We're fully integrated, so we've got nucleus and we've got multiplication, we've got sow farms, we've got nurseries, we've got 3 feed mills, we've got finishing sites, several hundred finishing sites. And as you can see, to the point that was made about where disease exists, we're just about ground zero in southern Minnesota and Iowa where we operate. So we do take that into account, and I think you'll find that some of our measures are maybe higher than others because of where we live. Okay, so this is what I wanted to walk through today. And I started to think about, okay, what is our approach to biosecurity when it comes to transportation? But it's more than transportation. We go all the way back upstream and we do cross-functional interdepartmental planning about biosecurity broadly, and transportation is a part of that. Then we agree and align on the procedures and protocols that we're going to follow in our system. Then we communicate those broadly, not just within the departments, but also with all of our vendors, all of our suppliers, and all of our contract folks. We monitor and audit compliance to those measures that we've put out, and then we take corrective actions. So a little bit about planning. We have our health team runs semi-annual biosecurity call-out sessions, and this is all departments together. And this is where we figure out where are those cross-departmental, or cross-functional dependencies that we have where we've got to bring biosecurity to the fore. And in that meeting, we review the condition of the system. So where is the level of disease throughout our system, where we live and where we operate? And then we review the updates by department. So every department comes and talks about, these are the initiatives that we're currently working on that have to do with biosecurity. Here's the status of it. Here's what we're doing next, and here's where we could use some help from other departments to get those things done. When it comes to transportation specifically, one of the things that we do in planning is scheduling, and scheduling quite carefully. We have to coordinate our pig and feed movements. We don't want those things going on at one farm at the same time, so that's one piece. Then we sequence the farm visits to make sure that those things are occurring in a biosecure manner. And that's for feed deliveries. We schedule our load crews in a biosecure manner so that we don't have any risk there. We look at our carrier and driver schedules to make sure they are flowing in the right manner. And then we look at the equipment, the trucks and trailers that are involved, to make sure that those things are flowing in the right manner. And then we also take a look at reset. So what is downtime that's required? What is the sanitation that's required for all those steps along the way? The other thing that takes some planning is when we have herd movements or downloads. Those are incremental moves to our usual day in, day out schedule. So that we have to check capacity for washing. We have to check capacity for drivers. We have to check capacity for equipment to make those things happen on top of our regular schedule. The other thing where planning comes into play is when we have emergencies that happen that need a quick response. And that can be anything from a 2-day blizzard that rips across Iowa and slows everything down for a good period of time. Could be a shutdown at the plant, turnbacks from our carriers, disease breaks, and then just emergency breakdowns that happen. So they vary by their impact in terms of their size, but those things need sometimes a complete rescheduling of everything that we've got in our schedule. And when we do that, we've got to put those loads back in place in a biosecure fashion. And depending on the impact of the event, that can take weeks and weeks and weeks to fully recover from. So this next is about the agreement and alignment to rules and procedures. So like I said, all departments understand transportation expectations, just like transportation understands everyone else's expectations. So that runs across the health team, marketing team, scheduling team, production, trailer sanitation team, our contract growers, our company drivers, our contract drivers, our load crews. So we try to build that alignment through that whole network. And not just what is expected of them, but what should they see? For instance, what should a driver see when he shows up at a farm? What kind of behaviors and methods should he expect to see there, and vice versa? So these are just examples of some of our practices. There's obviously, and most of these are probably familiar to most of you, but downtime, clean cabs, Tyvek suits, gloves, shoe covers, the sequencing of our origins and destinations, a little bit on clean trailers. So 100% of our internal movements are sanitized. And when we sanitize a trailer on the inner sanctum of our operation, that is a scrape and flush. It's then a full power wash and disinfectant. And then importantly, it gets an inspection at that point before it moves along and goes through a bio-dry. The pass rate of those inspections is something that we want to continue to raise over time, so that usually it's really the exception that a trailer does not pass inspection the first time. And then all market moves, so that's from our finishers to market, those receive clean trailers if that move is 7 or more days before the farm's last closeout. Then we have some dedicated assets. So if you reach back up into the very tip top of our network and you talk about our nucleus and our multiplication moves, we have a dedicated wash that handles those movements. So we have dedicated trailers within that wash, and even within that wash, we have certain trailers that are dedicated to very particular farms. So they don't go anywhere but that farm, back to that wash, and back to that farm. Okay, so we communicate those expectations and we generate buy-in throughout the whole system. So all departments, all contractors, all visitors understand our biosecurity expectations. And the good part about this is everyone is expected, if you see something, say something. And that means if I'm on the farm and I've got a trailer that shows up and I know I'm supposed to have a clean trailer arriving and it's not clean, I turn that trailer away and I call in and I say, this guy showed up with a dirty trailer, I need a different one. And that's perfectly okay. There's no repercussions for that. We encourage that behavior, we reward that behavior, and tell those folks you did the right thing. You're helping to protect our herd and our operation. We also have 24-hour transportation on-call coverage, and this is something we initiated a few years ago. And that gives, as you know, when Murphy's Law says those things are going to happen in the middle of the night. So we have an on-call person who's really well trained and has gained a lot of experience over the last 3 years. She knows what to do given the circumstances that occur overnight. So she gives great direction about what do we need to do to address that situation. If it's something as drastic as, a trailer rollover, well, then she starts waking people up like myself and we get going to rectify that. But typically she can handle those moves and make them in a biosecure way. So we monitor and audit compliance. So whenever we have a farm break, we go through the records of every visit to that site. And we track and trace pig flow, we track and trace the people that have come and gone from that place, the equipment, the deliveries, the supplies. And then we look at the strain and sequence matching to see, where this thing may have come from. And that helps us inform our decisions going forward. One of the things that we're kind of just starting in is the whole idea of GPS monitoring. So monitoring via GPS our people, so how they move about our system, our equipment and how that moves through our system, and the same with our drivers and carriers on the feed side and on the pig side, to make sure that they are doing what we've scheduled them to do and they're not wandering onto the wrong farm, having, let's say, come from a hot farm and end up at a green farm. That's a terrible scenario, and this can really help us prevent that. At our trailer sanitation sites, we have semi-annual audits. We have 5 sites, and in those audits, we're looking at protocol execution. Are they doing what they're supposed to do? How's our SOP compliance? We do swabs of the facility, we do swabs of trailers, we do swabs of cabs, we do swabs of steering wheels. We swab the heck out of the place to figure out what exists in our trailer washes. And there's a really good continuous improvement mentality in those washes. It's one of the things I'm most proud of is that those teams in those washes have an amazing engagement to biosecurity and what it means when they keep a trailer clean and what it means if they don't keep a trailer clean. And these, let's face it, these folks are crawling around on their hands and knees often, shoveling pig poop for a living. And to build that engagement in that team is just remarkable to me. And they take great ownership in what they do, a lot of pride in what they do, and they do a really, really good job. So, depending on what we find in our investigations, we take corrective actions. So, the things that we consider when we're taking corrective actions was what we were talking about a willful act. Did somebody know all the rules and intentionally break them? Were they inexperienced? Did they not have training? I think that was brought up earlier. What has been our precedent? We've probably experienced this before. What did we do then? So we keep our response consistent over time. And we take a look at what was the risk that was presented by that act. And then what does it say in our contracts with our carriers or with our producers? What are the contractual ramifications of what happened? And then we talk about, okay, what's the degree of our response? Is this a zero tolerance situation where that was a willful, obvious, high-risk move that was made? Or we move to like 2 strikes. Okay, we'll give you 1 on this one, but hopefully you learn and we never see this again. And then discipline comes as well. That can be termination. It could be dismissal. It could be a breach of contract with a contractor. Then another thing that we're looking at is bringing in, like I mentioned before, those GPS bits of data to help us understand where are we having breaches, and then we have to go through the process of forming policy around that and get that addendum into the contracts for those folks to reflect those things. Just a little bit about economics. So, like I said, we go through potential risk and cost analysis. So, when the herd relocation is due to a break, we take a look at what's the risk of that farm that we're looking to move, of contracting that disease that we know exists near them. What's the cost of relocating that herd? What stage of development is that herd at this point? And do we have a destination for that herd? Sometimes that's a real showstopper. If we haven't got somewhere to move them to, there's no sense in trying to move them. So PPE adoption is another one. There's certainly levels of protection and the efficacy of protection, the cost of those materials, but also what's the likelihood of adoption? Are folks really going to use what we've put forward? And then biosecure routing. So what's the distance and cost of taking a biosecure route and maintaining the distance that we desire? Just as an example, unfortunately, we lost a biodry in the spring in Nebraska to a tornado. And so right now, all those trailers that support our Nebraska operation are making the trip all the way up to Sleepy Eye, Minnesota to go through a trailer sanitation process. So that's 10 hours round trip of transportation cost to make sure that those trailers are sanitized before they go back out to Nebraska to do the work out there. So that's an expensive choice that we were forced to make. We're rebuilding the biodry right now, and I can't wait for it to open back up and begin to put things back where they should be. So that's kind of what I had. I also have some support from our health team here, so if we have questions that I can't handle, I know that they can. So
Thanks. We have plenty of time for questions, so we'll open the floor.
Really interesting presentation. You mentioned your pass rate on trailers today and trying to get that up to near 100. Just curious today, what are you seeing on pass rates?
It varies by wash, but I think we're getting into the high 90s. I mean, in some of our washes, those folks are really focused and take a lot of pride in getting every chip and every piece of material out of that thing before they call it good and send it for an inspection.
Okay. And then your wash manager, you said, does the final inspection?
Yep.
Okay. And then one other question I had, your weekly schedule process you talked about, is there a final approval at some level of that schedule? Like, is there an approval process by the health team?
Well,
or is that...
they don't go through every one of our schedules. Our folks know the rules, and there's several eyes on that schedule. is the person that writes the schedule, that person's manager. The marketing team is also involved in that schedule. So there's a lot of folks inspecting that over time. The challenge comes, it seems like the minute we write a schedule, we start to change it. And so that's where the real challenge comes. You can write the first schedule perfectly, and then as it starts to change, that's where the challenge comes. Like, okay, now we've got to unplug a few things. How do we plug them back in with biosecurity in mind so that we don't make any mistakes?
Thank you.
Sure.
Have you ever looked at recontamination rates of your trailers? Given the current situation where you're driving those trailers 10 hours, washing, disinfecting, you're then driving back.
Yep.
Have you looked at that?
We haven't been swabbing back in Nebraska, but I would bet that Doc Aaron would love to see some numbers about that. Thankfully, I think we've been pretty safe since that point, but that would be a good measure to have that we don't have right now.
I think there's many of us that would like to see that
Yeah,
data as well. So.
yeah. Because it's a long trip.
Yeah, I was just curious because in terms of biosecurity on site, have there been discussions around on-site sanitation of the trailers just as a secondary measure of like being able to prevent like the trailers from like having contaminants on there?
So prior to pickup, all the way forward at the site, we haven't at this point. I like the idea if we could afford it. I'd have to think about how we would do that. That could be a challenge. But that's a great idea, especially given the concentration of disease that we're facing.
Oh, go ahead.
Couple questions. I'm curious, do you have built into your washing protocols, are you utilizing soap or detergent in that process? And then secondly, as you're auditing the SOPs and process around the execution at the truck wash level, are you looking at things like water temperature, dilution rates for your disinfectant pH levels?
Yep, yeah. So we're not using soap. We used to use soap. We found that it really wasn't doing us a whole lot of good. We're still, with baked on or frozen trailers, we're still having to hammer away at them to get that first initial flush to get the bulk of the material off. And we found that it really wasn't helping so much. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
As you're auditing your execution of processes and SOPs,
Yep.
Are you looking at like water temperature, the
Yep.
power washers, and pH and dilution rates for your disinfection?
Yep, we do. We monitor that stuff on a weekly basis to make sure that all that stuff is running at the right temperature with the right concentrations and so forth. That's just part of a weekly checklist that our wash managers go through.
I have a question. So at your system, who does the schedule? Is one person, multiple people?
So-
Is automated, is manual?
Yep. Right now, it's quite manual, and we have a team of folks that write the schedules. So we have a person that writes the multiplication schedules, and we have a person that writes the commercial schedules. So those two are on the inner sanctum, so the inner moves. Then we have a person that writes the market schedule. And all of those folks report to a supervisor that oversees all that. They are all cross-trained, so they're able to back each other up. One of the challenges that we're going to have in the near future is we're moving out of our current system and moving into a new system that will hopefully bring some more automation and have biosecurity kind of built right into it to help guide a draft of that schedule that we'll just handle the exceptions on. So that's kind of where we're hoping to head.
And how you prevent errors in scheduling? Is somebody double checking or is production reviewing a
Yep.
schedule on top?
So the person that writes the schedule is the first person, and they're educated on how to put things into a biosecure fashion. That gets looked at by their supervisor as well. And we also have great concern from our marketing folks, the folks that do the placement of the pigs. They're overseeing that as well. We share those, I guess, screens with them so they can see what we're doing and we can see what they're doing. Yeah.
And finally, just a comment. Thanks for your talk. And having the director of logistics talking about biosecurity instead the director of health tells a lot of the way you guys live biosecurity. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Great presentation, David. How do you currently monitor your pathogen load in all your critical sites, for example, in the nucleus and your big farms? Do you have a team taking swipes and send it to a local laboratory? And if you do that, what are you actually monitoring? Just 2, 3, the key pathogens, or that would be very interesting.
Doc Aaron, you want to take that one? This is our swabber.
I'd say specific to the transportation, piece to that, there would be weekly monitoring that's done just as a surveillance level. And so an environmental swab is collected of clean trailers just on the back near where the door opens. And so therefore, there's no risk of recontaminating the trailer in that process. So you're just reaching in without stepping into the trailer. And so, we'll be looking for, obviously the big players in the U.S., so PERS, PED, and some of those multiplex tests that are available today. We've also added rotavirus testing just as an indicator organism. So we're not necessarily worried about the transmission of rotavirus within the system, but we use that as a proxy to say, is there potentially pig material here that would indicate that the trailer sanitation process needs to improve? And so that's one other test that we've added on just as another layer and a tool to say, is this trailer clean or dirty, and did we successfully remove organic material? And then so that happens on a routine basis, and that's no different at any location or anywhere. That happens internally on a weekly basis at all locations. And then furthermore, when we do the auditing process, we'll take more environmental samples or closely look at trailers during a routine inspection process and test for the same things, but then just look at different areas either around the truck wash, the trailers, truck cabs, things like that, and use that for continuous improvement conversations. So.
It's a great presentation. I really appreciate your perspective. We're going through this in our company right now, trying to change the culture. So I think it's very interesting that you spoke on that, on the culture side of it. Just curious on your contract side, how do you manage some of like your ground separation on your market loads? How are they using booties? Are they using mats, containers? And then also, do you see issues with trucking companies farming out loads to other trucking companies? And how do you manage biosecurity expectations that way?
Yeah. On the whole, like subcontracting, or we don't allow that. And I don't care if the person they're giving it to has got, all the licensing that they need and so forth. We need to know who's driving every one of our loads. And they have to be cleared by our transportation manager. We've had trouble in the past when we've allowed folks to subcontract loads out. Our protections on the internal side are much higher than they are on the market side, I'll be honest. That's where we've got Tyvek, 3 sets of shoe covers, gloves, and there's a very strict protocol of how to get into that trailer and how to get out of that trailer. It's not nearly as tight on the market side as it is on the internal side.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, great. Any further questions of David or any of our, I know Dr. Blair is left, but any of Cesar? Okay, please, thank you for your
you're welcome.
presentation.
Thank you.